Hi everyone, and welcome to the Movement Image. In part 1 of this series, I talked about the Safdie brothers' 2017 film, Good Time. A movie that uses constant uncertainty to create an intensely stressful atmosphere. In this video, I'll talk about the Safdies' 2019 film, Uncut Gems, which follows Adam Sandler's character Howard Ratner through his tumultuous life in the New York City jewelry trade. Like Good Time, Uncut Gems has a very stressful atmosphere, but this time it's brought about not by uncertainty, but claustrophobia. The feeling that the walls are constantly closing in on Howard is what injects adrenaline into the film. Talking about this effect, Uncut Gems director of photography, Darius Kanji, said, "For us, the glass, the metal, the reflection, all this was like a prison. The city is like a prison." Uncut Gems plays up these prison-like elements of the city to create a sense of claustrophobia, baking it into every element of the film, starting with basic shot composition. The Safdies chose anamorphic widescreen for Uncut Gems, and they used that wider frame to pack Howard into tight spaces, pack shots with people, or both. We see packed frames a lot in Uncut Gems, whether it's at a family dinner, in a closet, or at a performance. Almost everywhere he goes, we find Howard surrounded by people or in tightly enclosed spaces. And as we come to know his manipulative nature, we quickly learn these crowded frames mean a stressful situation isn't far behind. While we might not enjoy the intense, stressful environment Howard lives in, he craves it. A gambling addict, Howard relishes being trapped inside his impulsive decisions and surrounds himself with people he constantly has to work himself out of trouble with. There are a lot of examples of this. With Demaney, Howard has sold his watches without giving him any money. With his brother-in-law, Arno, Howard has a serious problem paying back gambling debts. Even in this scene, Howard spots his father-in-law and rushes in to resolve a dispute with him, going so far as to cram himself into the same section of the revolving door, a detail that reflects Howard's desire to engage in tight situations. This works the other way as well. When Demaney is trying to shake Howard at the 76ers facility, shots are empty and lacking color, showcasing how Howard is out of his element. This is also reflected when Julia moves out of Howard's apartment, and we watch as he wanders through the empty space in subtle disbelief. Plot elements play up the claustrophobia. An obvious example is the secured vestibule at Howard's shop, which sets the tone for the space. The claustrophobic vestibule locks in tension, meaning that when tempers flare, there's nowhere for characters to escape. Whatever conflicts happen in this space will always be pushed in a more aggressive direction. In a scene like Kevin Garnett's visit to Howard's shop, we see this innate tension. As if the small space isn't claustrophobic enough, the Safdies ratchet up the intensity by having KG bring his whole crew, ensuring every shot is packed with people. These extras block the frame, move throughout the space, and are shot at varying focal lengths to disrupt the scene's flow and add tension. By giving us a lot to keep track of, the confined space becomes a pressure cooker, creating a sense that something is bound to happen, and it could come from any direction. This psychological effect plays beautifully off of Howard's pinballing social demands. He's showing KG jewelry, he's cleaning KG's earrings, he's dealing with Demaney's hostility, he's worrying about KG hitting on Julia, and the list goes on and on. The Safdies weave these plot elements together with the cinematography for the scene, driving the intensity and creating a very stressful atmosphere. Another key sequence is the auction scene. In talking about its role in the film, Benny Safdie said, "If you look at the auction scene, it's not an action event, but we approached it like an action movie. This needs to be covered like a car crash or any big stunt that you do. You have to get all the angles. So, approaching the movie from the point of view of the characters in it, and then using that to dictate the pace, because if somebody in the movie is reliant on it, the weight is there from that point of view." We know how desperate Howard is for the money from this auction, and he's targeted KG for a bidding war. Because the Safdies have established Howard's manipulative nature, all of the people in this scene are a potential cause for concern. This is played up with claustrophobic cinematography, like using people's heads to block the frame. There's obviously enough room to avoid having these in the shot, but the Safdies put them there to increase tension, giving us the impression that this is a room packed with people and possibilities. This tension is then amplified by the quick cuts used in this scene that race us around the room and make us feel the same nervous energy as Howard. There are also surprises in store, such as this cut to phone in bidders we weren't aware of. All of this adds to the action-like stress of the scene, highlighting the auction's many variables and how uncertain we are of what will happen next. Filling the frame with people in this way adds tension to the scenes, but it also creates a type of gravity for characters, especially Howard. The Safdies said they were drawn to anamorphic widescreen because of the way it establishes Howard's gravity. And that gravity teaches us about the type of people Howard attracts. This is what makes a scene like this work, where Howard is just walking down the street. Because the depth of field is shallow, we don't know who's walking towards Howard. We know the types of people Howard attracts, which means we know that once any of these people come into focus, it could spell trouble for Howard. This speaks to how the Safdies have stressed us out with their filming style. It's reached a point where the protagonist simply walking down the street is a point of concern. Another way the film creates stress is through its use of color. The high contrast grittiness of Uncut Gems shows us that this is not a safe and pretty world, but one encrusted with the lived-in grime of New York City. Damien van der Kruisen, the film's colorist, said, "The Safdies wanted a very cinematic but modern New York rendition. We started with a softer contrast, but as the DI progressed, the directors wanted to push the blacks darker and crunchier, something a bit less controlled and polished, and more aggressive and lively." This high contrast, gritty look plays up certain colors, making blacks, blues, yellows, and whites more pronounced. The high contrast acts like a thermostat, keeping the film at a constant level of intensity. In this way, color serves as a reminder that there's very little middle ground in this movie. Events are aggressive and quickly swing from one extreme to the other. This is why a scene like the one at the Sixers facility I mentioned earlier catches our eye. It maintains a strong contrast, but loses most of the film's color scheme, cueing us to feel like something is off, and, in this instance, things might not go Howard's way. Because the filming style on Uncut Gems is so distinctive, it allows the Safdies to convey things with an uncommon approach. Take this sequence where Howard and Julia are at the Weeknd concert. Starting with a zoom in on Howard and Julia, the camera tells us that something is about to happen between them. Shortly after, the film cuts to Julia and the Weeknd hooking up in the bathroom while Howard searches for her. Howard gets upset when he catches them in the bathroom together, which eventually leads to him and Julia both getting thrown out of the club. Once outside, Howard and Julia begin arguing, and the filming here is unique. Darius Kanji said he'd never think to shoot a scene of this nature in this way. Ordinarily, a scene with this much strife and drama would be shot with individual close-ups, letting us see each character's emotions as the rift between them grows. But that's not what Howard and Julia's relationship is about. By keeping both characters in the frame, we're shown that this isn't about them being driven apart. This fight isn't a threat to their relationship, it is their relationship. Howard and Julia like to have intense fights like this, and by positioning the camera in the way that it does, the film is telling us that. The Safdie brothers are establishing a distinct language with their films. Their aggressively stressful cinematography in Good Time and Uncut Gems has allowed them to expand the visual language for film to better reflect our fast-paced world. By using grit and detail, they've created a frenetic cinematic style that, while stressful, is one that we can relate to.